Welcome to Finding Joy Live. I am so glad to be here today with you guys. My guest today is Casey Bertelsman, and she is an online business manager and fractional COO. And we are going to learn all about that as we learn about pivoting. I am really connected to this topic of how do we pivot? What is pivoting even? What is it? And what does it have to do with finding a way to be happier, more joyful, going in the direction of your dreams, right? So, welcome, Casey.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Donnalynn.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here with you, but I think we should just start with what is it that you do? What is a fractional COO? I
Yes.
literally looked it up, by the way.
Yes. So a fractional COO or online business manager, they're essentially the exact same thing. It just depends where your experience falls. A fractional COO is very much a corporate term. It's one of those C-suite roles. And an online business manager is more of a role that you see in online businesses. So it crosses both of those areas as far as corporate world or online pieces, because I touch a little bit of both.
That's great. I appreciate you going into a little detail on that. So when we first got talking to each other, we were talking about pivoting in your career, and I know you work with people in STEM. So for those of us who don't know, right, that's in science and math and what else?
So science, technology, engineering, and math is what STEM
Great.
stands for.
Great. See, I didn't even do it in the right order. um, so I know you work with people in that arena, and I feel like the word pivot probably has a slightly different nuance to it in that arena. But for me, and of course I'm a joy coach, so in the emotional world, when we talk about pivoting, we really talk about how do we go from one place to another.
Mhm.
Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So education wise, I went to school for engineering. Um, the degree was very, very specified. You graduate knowing what you're supposed to be doing day one, essentially. So very great program. But I got, 6 months in, I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life? Or is there like something more to this? And then another year passes and like still not loving it. Um, and then a little while later, the pandemic hit and you're at home all the time. And my job had never been remote at all prior to that. So you're opened up to this whole new world of opportunity and what online work even is now that like I'm working remotely from home, doing my engineering job, but I'm not loving my engineering role. So I started exploring things that excited me, that gave me more autonomy, and looking for a change because the corporate engineering world that I was a part of just did not feel like a fit for who I wanted to grow into and live my life as. And so the pivot I was looking for was that opportunity that allowed me to become that person and step into a role that felt like me.
Hmm. So I love that you're talking about in terms of the process of what you went through. You're talking a little bit about that same process that we go through when we want to go from being unhappy to being happy, right? And the first part of that really is awareness. And a lot of times people say to me, "I am aware. I know what the problem is," right?
Mhm,
But there's an awareness that has to go beyond that,
mhm.
right? So, yes, of course, when you don't know what you don't want, you might be able to figure out what you do want, but it takes real awareness to really figure out what it is you don't want, why you don't want it, what is that? What is it in you that's not satisfied? And then to be able to kind of be in that allowing space of letting the next thing come in. Did you experience any of that in that transition?
I would say without a doubt, because part of that experience in trying to decide, is my engineering role right for me, was, are there ways that I can, make it fit me more? How do I ask for work that aligns with what I want? How do I work on these specific projects or have this kind of leadership role? And as I started having those opportunities, it still did not fulfill me the way that I wanted it to. There were some days that were really, really good, but most days is like, okay, I'm making money. Like,
Mm,
yes,
mm,
that's wonderful, but
mm,
there's more to life than making money.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it can't be the only thing.
yes,
Money is great. It's good. It's important. We can't eat without it. All those things. We can't be in society without it. But uh, but it absolutely it will kill a dream.
yes,
If that's all you got. If that's it, like I want to be a billionaire is like, okay, probably you might need to think a little bigger.
yeah, like,
Like, what do you want to
why?
do? And what do you want to do? And how do you want to change the world? And what is your reason for getting up in the morning and all of those things, right?
Yes.
So as you realized that you achieved your goals and then you were dissatisfied in them, what happened internally for you? What was the next step that you took? You went like you woke up one day and you went,
Yeah, so I mean, it's frustrating when, especially, you spend 4 or 5 years of your education, however much money that is, to be in a role and you're like, this is exactly what I've been preparing for, and now it's not what I want. It's frustrating, it's disheartening. And so, part of you, in my circumstance, you say, well, what if we look outside of the job? Because my whole life doesn't have to be my job. I
mm,
can consider ways outside of my employment that I can also be satisfied, and seeing what that looks like. And for me, that looked like starting a podcast because I'm a huge fan of podcasts. And that podcast led to a little side hustle that is now my full time business because I loved both of those things so much, and was able to put my time and my passion into those to have them grow.
mm. I love that you're talking about the incrementalness of it, right? So what you described is finding something that feels better.
Mhm.
Well, I could probably entertain myself, and that would feel better than where I am now. How would I entertain myself? What interests me, right? These are all the things we tune into in that process. What interests me? Why does it interest me? How do I wish it would be different? What would my contribution to that conversation be if I could have that conversation? Podcasts are a great, great place to do that. That's why I love podcasting. I want you to talk a little bit about, because I'm going to put up your podcast here, a little bit about the podcast itself, right? So
Mhm.
what's nice about it is that you're in that same arena. So there was this moment likely for you that went something like, I'm really unsatisfied in it. I wonder if there are other people who are satisfied. I wonder if there are other people who are unsatisfied. I wonder what those conversations would be like. So what are the conversations that you bring to light in She Sparks Tech?
Yes. So I started She Sparks Tech because in my role in engineering in the construction industry, the number of women that you have that you can look up to in leadership roles is very, very small. So picturing what it looks like in 5 years, 10 years, where could I be? There's not someone already sitting there that you can talk to and lean on, or maybe there's one person. And I'm like, there are amazing women in engineering, in tech, in STEM that are out there and that I want to be connecting with. And so September of 2020, when everything shut down and people are starting to network online, I I launched my podcast because everyone's online now. So why not use that as an opportunity to connect with amazing women building careers in tech? And each episode highlights an interview with someone that I've connected with who is loving their role, whether they are traditionally educated in that space or if they've pivoted into the space, to
Mm.
highlight that tech can be inclusive and you do not have to come from the stereotypical background. There's room at the table for any woman who wants to be in tech.
Mm, mm. It's a great point. I know a few people actually who are working with women in STEM for this exact reason, because there is sort of that space of you will be the first, but you won't be the last. And it's not actually as hard as we think it is, even though it's harder than sometimes we think it is, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I was thinking about when you were talking, I was thinking about how when I was younger, I was in a business that there were no women in. There were zero women in that. Um, and I can remember somebody asking me, actually a newspaper asking me, what was it like to be a woman in that world? And I had no reference point, right? So I said to
Yeah.
them that. I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. There are no other women here. So I can't give you a generalization. I can't say, oh, the women are clearly treated differently, or the women are clearly treated the same, or any of that, right? I can only say my personal experience because maybe I'm annoying, right? I don't
Yeah.
know, right? So maybe I made a political misstep, maybe, right? So you just don't know, like you can't put your finger on it. And so that one of the benefits I think of raising awareness like you're doing on your podcast, like we're doing on my two podcasts, is to really for people to be able to say, oh, that's not just my experience, that's your experience and your experience and your experience. This is an issue. I need to figure out how to solve that issue, as
Yes.
opposed to just like I don't know, they didn't like me. I don't know. They didn't recommend me for that promotion. I don't know why, or any of those things, right?
Yes.
Or even the answers that you do get, right? The answers that you do get are not always the answers that are what is really behind everything, because that's how we live in the world. It's a little bit, people are trying to spare feelings and,
Yes.
all those things. So it's great that you're bringing that up on your podcast. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Really great. So let's talk more about that pivot process, right? So
Mhm.
we've got this space where you've become aware and you've tapped into something you want to do. You're like, oh, I could do that. That would be fun. I will do it. And then there's the whole process of figuring out, which for some people is really lights you up, and for other people makes them want to crawl back into bed. So, which is it for you?
I definitely think most of the time it does light me up, and that could just be the nature of my background in training and problem solving. It's like I'm here and I want to get there, and I'm going to figure out how to do it because I want to. If I was not interested in it, then it's not necessarily a problem worth solving. But I like to think of myself as an ideas person. And not only do I have ideas, I know how to actually bring them to life, which
Mm,
is so important,
mm,
because ideas that are never actually put into fruition are only ever just ideas, and they're lost opportunities that way.
mm. And it does sound to me like a part of that was really required that pivot process over and over and over again, right? Because tech is frustrating.
Yes.
Well, for some of us anyway.
There
So
are days when even if you are a tech person, you are frustrated with tech.
yeah, yeah, right. Because you sign up for the thing that you think it is, and then you get there and you're like, oh my god, now I have to learn something completely new from scratch. Or no, I got this. I see how it works, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, what exactly does happen with this,
Yep.
right? Or why are people not seeing it? Oh, I didn't put that hashtag in, or I didn't write whatever
Hmm.
um, those things are. I forgot to sign up for to get it on iTunes.
Hmm.
Um, Apple Podcasts. I know, I'm not that old. And so that is really a continual pivot, right? Because you're talking about a giant pivot. You're talking about I was in one place and I made all of these changes to go to another place,
Yes.
but every day you had to make that change over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yes. So it was, I mean, when I say it now, it sounds like it was, a light switch. And that is not the situation at all. I mean, the biggest thing that I had to manage was like I use the word grieve. I grieved the future that I had pictured for myself as I went through my education and my career. I grieved what could have been because it was not what I wanted it to be. And like drawing a line for myself and saying, I don't need to reach XYZ milestone if the goal is to leave. That
Mm-hmm.
milestone doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
at that point. It matters only if that's your career, if that's what you want to stick with. And that was a grieving process that took me probably 18 months to really accept what that looked like. And it was hard because you feel all kinds of guilt surrounding it. You're worried about what people are going to think of you, your family, your friends, people you went to school with, people you work with. Everyone has an opinion. That doesn't mean it should matter to me, but you're going to hear it anyway.
Yeah, and these are your frameworks, right? These are the ways in which you see yourself is through
Mm-hmm.
these lenses often.
Yes.
So you're talking about letting go, right? You're talking
Yeah.
about being aware and saying to yourself, "Oh, I had a dream. I had a dream and I had made it so specific that I thought I knew exactly what it was."
Yes.
But I had made it so specific that it actually didn't fulfill the dream that I have, right? Because the original
Yeah.
dream is still alive, even in that grieving process, right? You're having to let go, you're having to grieve, you're having to say, okay, I accept that I'm not going in that direction. I'm choosing something different, but you're not actually choosing something different, right? You're
Yes.
choosing the true inner meaning of what you wanted in the first place. Usually, for most people, that's where they go back to. They don't know it. They think they gave up. They think it's too hard. They think that, this company is not the right company and I can't get a job anywhere else because there's COVID and, all the things. They think there are
Mm-hmm.
obstacles, but that turning back inward and saying, okay, I'm willing to let go of what I thought I was doing in order to be in the unknown of what I might be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were in that space of the unknown, how did you handle that? What did that look like for you?
There was, I mean, I would be lying if I said I never second guessed it. And a lot of that comes from, one really great day at the job that you're planning on leaving, or a really great
Which always
review.
happens right after you decide, right?
Yes. Um, or, there's something good happens and you're like, but wait, why am I leaving? This could be good. And, those rose colored glasses fill in a gap there. But what I always found was there was something that, you know, pulls your feet out from under you again. And for me, like my straw that broke the camel's back was I was on a conference call with the larger construction team, and the owner of a project was very, very mad about errors that had happened and costs that were sky high because 2020, 2021 with the pandemic, construction costs are way higher than anyone anticipated.
Yeah.
And there's inappropriate language on the call. I'm getting yelled at. The people who are above me at my job, who probably should be defending me, are not there. And the errors were not my issue. They belong to someone who no longer worked with us because of poor
These
work
errors.
happening. Yes.
Right.
And so I'm the one that is getting yelled at for this on this call. And so I'm muting myself, I'm losing it, I'm trying to speak and defend myself. And at the end of the call, I'm like, I can't do that for the rest of my life. Like, I am not interested in defending myself and having panic attacks after having these interactions, when ideally you should be loving the people you're working with and they should be loving the work you do. Mistakes happen, but how the people you work with process and manage themselves through these mistakes should not be determining if you're happy or not in your role, if you are doing quality work. And that was about 6 months before my last day, but that was, I am leaving and I'm doing whatever it takes to get out of here. And that was when I just really ramped up my business, and I was like, okay, we need to like get this going. We need to get money moving through here. We need to get money in the bank, get that cushion. Like, I am not lasting any longer than I have to through this.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're bringing up really important points. So this thing that you talked about where like you have a good day really speaks to, because what you're doing in the background here is raising your vibration, right? That's what you're doing. You're making yourself lighter, easier going, creating the chemicals in your body of ease and repair as opposed to of stress and disease, right? That's sort of where that line is between those two things, right? And so the more you go like, well, what could I like? Maybe I'll start a podcast. That would be kind of funner than what I'm doing in my spare time right now. So, right? That the more you do that, it's the old saying, a rising tide raises all boats, right? Suddenly your world starts to be better. You go like, oh, it's not bad here. It's not bad here. It's kind of good. I like, I never knew I liked that person, but I really like that, right? And so you kind of, that it's because you change, your viewpoint on everything changes, and then you can receive the next piece of clarity. The really clarifying moment where you said, gee, this is not a role I want to be in. This is just, they're playing in a sandbox I don't want to be in. They're playing with rules I don't want to have, all of that. You remind me so much with your story of a day. I can remember, it was a career ago, and but I can remember where the designer for, we used to work in designing houses and selling furniture and things like this, and um the designer had made a mistake. She had just made a giant mistake, but I was her boss. And so I went in and the client blamed me for it. Like, they totally I wasn't even involved in it. And I just said, yep, that's right. Because she could walk back in. And that is the benefit of having a good boss above you, where you weren't in that situation, right? You weren't ever going to get out of that unscathed, right? Because once the person who can actually do the work and who's trying to fix the work, and maybe it's you're the person who made the mistake, maybe you're not, but people make mistakes, right? So that's going to happen. But if you don't have somebody in your organization to handle the objection from the client, either by being the fall guy, right, or by knowing exactly how to do the communication in a way that it isn't an issue in the relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's, it's definitely one of those situations where money is a hard topic. I understand that people get emotional in all different directions about money, especially when things are no longer in budget. But there is, in my opinion, an appropriate way to express that professionally. And if it's not handled correctly the first time that it's brought up as a concern, or maybe even the second time, like, the level of anger should not have been a step one. It should have been, I've brought this up and why is no one doing anything? Because, I mean, there are always boundaries around a project that cause these issues, whatever it is. Something's driving mistakes. None of us set out to make them. In this instance, it was time constraints and a schedule that was just probably not feasible. And
And a world that had just changed, right? Because you were talking about
yes,
this being during that first response to the pandemic, and
yes.
like nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew how to go to work and how to get things done, and why nobody was going to deliver the things anymore. And everything fell apart for a little while there,
Yes.
longer than people anticipated, certainly. Well, I love that you're bringing up anger, because I think that in this case, in business, my father used to say, I had a real anger issue when I was in my 20s. I had a real anger issue. Like, I would go from being just like, this is not good, I don't know what to do about it, to just being like really angry, right? For no reason. Exactly what you described.
Mhm.
And my father used to say, there is no place for anger in business. And for me, that really changed things for me. It made me realize that I was invested in an outcome, in a time schedule, in a way that didn't serve me and didn't serve the process and wasn't going to result in anything that I wanted. And
Mhm.
that when I did that internal work, when I said, okay, so maybe find out what I am feeling, maybe deal with that before I step into the ring and try to, have a
Mhm.
conversation with people about the outcomes and the reality, right? The real
Yep.
life. That once you do that internal work, all of that changes. Everything changes. The responses change. Like you said, it could have been a really different conversation.
Yes.
Also, I want to bring up that, that process of frustration and anger that you described. I feel good. I'm doing my podcast. I go to work. It's kind of crappy and I don't want to do it. I'm really clear. I don't want to do it. Oh, I'm going to get higher up in my feelings because I'm going to make the money, and then I get a good client, and maybe I get two good clients, right? And okay, things are going good, and then I go to work and I have a crappy day. Right?
Mhm.
That those feelings of up and down, they are totally normal in the pivot process. They're the middle.
Mhm.
That's the way it is in the middle, right? When
Yes.
you're going from one vibration to another, when you're going from being like in the I'm trying to make something work that it's not going to work and it feels like it's not going to work, to I know I have something that will work for me, and now I have to find out how to get there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, what came out of that? So, you have the podcast, and then you started getting clients, and you
Yes.
work with who do you work with?
So I work with business owners and CEOs, um, and their businesses are not at a size where they're looking to hire full-time employees, but they need someone on their team um, helping with growth strategy and tech implementation and what it looks like to grow and be capable of bringing on a full-time team potentially, or seeing what they want to achieve with their business. So I come in as that right hand person, their COO to their CEO, and we work hand in hand. We take their vision and their mission, and I use my implementation skills, my tech skills to say, this is where we're going and how we're getting there, and taking things off their plate so that they can spend their time not worrying about their website or their sales page. They're worrying about being with clients and living in their zone of genius.
Mm, nice. Nice. Well, this seems like a perfect time to just ask the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to learn more, they want to actually reach out to you and see if there's a good fit there.
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. So the banner has my Instagram name, it's just my name, and you'll find me. I'm mostly active in stories. I'm also active on my podcast page, which is connected there. So it is the She Sparks Tech that we showed earlier.
And
Um,
people can message you there. So if somebody's at home
yep.
going, this is what I need, right?
Yes,
They can
by
message
all
you on
means,
Instagram.
send me a message, ask questions. I was able to get to the point that I am now because people paid forward things that they had learned. And so I am very much in the pay it forward, share what I've learned. How can I help other people grow? because like anything else, we all do better when we all move forward. And so I'm not looking to kick rungs out on the ladder as I climb up it.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to remind everybody that you can also reach out to me. Obviously, I'm a joy coach, so this is what we've been talking about all day. Even though it sounds like we're talking about frustration, irritation, finding our dream, those are all part of how do we get to joy. I have on my website, which is up right now, it's donnalynn.blog, and I have there for you three tools that you can use to get control of your emotions. It talks a lot about anxiety, but the truth is, if you were to use it on frustration, if you were to use most of those tools on any emotions that are getting in the way of you getting from where you want to go to someplace more peaceful, more productive, easier going, and definitely on the train to joy, then you should definitely pick that up. And I really want to encourage you to do it quickly and soon, because it will not be available after next week. So this is the last chance that everybody has to go and do that. So go to donnalynn.blog, pick up the free giveaway. It's 3 tools. They're super effective. And of course, you can learn about me and reach out to me on all of that as well there. So I'm so grateful that you spent this time with us today. I feel like we really talked a lot about that pivot process, but there's one thing that we missed, and it was really the outcome, the payoff. What was the payoff? How did we get to the place where we say, okay, now I'm on my own and I'm in my business, and what does that feel like for you?
Yes, so I have been working in my business full time for it's 9 months now. It'll be 10 months next month because I left February of 2022. And like my business has grown more than I ever expected this past year. It's given me time freedom. I work fewer hours and I make more money. Um, I will say that there have definitely been instances where it's just felt like I've gotten lucky. It has been hard work and luck, and there's no one way to go about it. But I love being able to wake up every morning and be excited about the work I'm doing. And like, I love Sundays looking forward to Monday because I love what I do now. And it sounds so weird. I would have thought you were off your rocker if like you told me I would have ever felt like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
having the freedom that I do as a business owner, being able to make the decision about who I work with after having bad client experiences, I could not put a value on that. For me, that is beyond measure. And the flexibility that comes with it is just priceless.
That's great. That's really great. I also love that in there you bring up about money stress, because I love it whenever I hear people say, I make more and I work less, because sometimes when people hear that, they think like, well, okay, now you're lazy and you make too much money, right? But in reality, it speaks a lot about what kind of stress there was before this moment, and not just on money, but also on the amount of time that it takes to make a living, to be able to pay for a reasonable lifestyle. And also that even when we make that change, that what we do with that extra time, right? When we become really productive and really efficient, what we do with that extra time, which by the way, you can't do unless you're in a good emotional place. Nobody's efficient when they're in a bad emotional place.
Yeah.
But what we do with that time is maybe we spend it with the dog. Maybe we spend it in my house, it's the cats, with our families. But maybe we spend it on a new dream as well, an additional dream, right? How are we impacting the world? And what do we get to do with that freedom that we get from stepping into our own power, right? That's really what you did there. It's
Yeah.
really amazing. Really great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. And please share this video, like this video, subscribe to the channel, send people, we're on Facebook and on YouTube, so subscribe on YouTube. join the group on Facebook and send it to your friends and say, hey, this is a cool group. Let's go there and watch the podcast every once in a while. Thank you.